How's everyone doing today? I'm the Suited Whiskey Snob here for another whiskey review. And today I have something that I'm pretty excited about. So what this is going to be a blended malt scotch. It's the Johnnie Walker 15-year aged. Now there's a couple reasons that I'm excited about this. Number one, it allows me to give you some of the terminology in the whiskey industry. So I'll go through that really quick. What do those words mean? Blended malt scotch. Okay, so blended means that this whiskey right here is taking from multiple distilleries. So they're not just taking, Lagavulin going to be from the Lagavulin distillery. This guy's not like that. They take from multiple different guys. And then what's the second word? Malt. So what malt means is that it's going to be a single grain. Typically with malt, it's going to be a barley grain. And I know with this specific blended malt scotch, that it is actually barley. So when you put those words together, blended malt scotch, it means it's coming from multiple distilleries. All of the distilleries are going to be using the single grain, and scotch meaning it's going to be made in Scotland. The resources that you're using are all coming from Scotland, and everything up to the bottling is done in Scotland. Now, Johnnie Walker Green Label is a very popular whiskey brand here in America and also over in Scotland as well. They've been around for a very long time and they've been extremely popular. You go into almost any bar and you can get a Johnnie Walker served as well. So, Johnnie Walker Green Label. It's very unique because this is I believe this is actually the only Johnnie Walker in their lineup that is a blended malt scotch and not just a regular blended scotch. And we'll also go over that. So the difference between a blended malt scotch and a blended scotch is very simple. The blended malt scotch is using one grain. The blended scotch is using any kind of grains, multiple different grains. You really don't even know what you're drinking in the blended scotch, which is why most blended scotch is going to come at a very, very affordable price point, when a blended malt scotch is going to be relatively similar to that of a scotch. And another thing about Johnnie Walker Green Label, because it was a completely different product from the Johnnie Walker lineup, they actually went almost extinct at one point, where it was very hard to find Johnnie Walker Green Label. And people were upset about it, and they were wondering what was going on. They couldn't get a single thing out of Johnnie Walker. And eventually in 2016, they said that they will be regularly releasing it again, which for enthusiasts like myself, they were absolutely blown away by that and super happy. And now it's super easy to find yourself some Johnnie Walker Green Label. And we are very thankful to Johnnie Walker for that. So another cool thing about Johnnie Walker Green Label, this is one of the only blended malt scotches that are going to give you the distilleries right on the front label that they use. So they use Talisker, Linkwood, Cragganmore, and Colella. So that's actually going to be a very elegant blend because all of those are relatively higher end distilleries. You can't really get any of those scotches for a affordable price point. I actually have a couple of the bottles over there myself. I have Colella and I have Talisker. I believe my Colella 12-year was around $80 and my Talisker 10-year was around $100. So they're by no means a cheap whiskey or a cheap scotch. They're definitely higher end, which makes this that much better. Another thing, it's 15-year aged. This in Alberta is a $75 bottle for a 15-year aged blended malt scotch. Now that's an amazing price point when you think about what is actually in here. There's realistically, all of those distilleries are going to be above $130 for a 15-year aged. So for getting that in a $70 bottle, that's very impressive. Without further ado though, guys, I think we've covered all the Scientology terms. I'm going to go ahead and pour myself some whiskey so I can start drinking. So, before I actually drink this, I'm just going to mention really quick, So I've had Colella and I've had Talisker. Colella is going to be an Islay Scotch, so it's gonna have the peated smokiness that you find in the Islay region. Talisker is gonna be an island Scotch, so you're bound to find things like sea salt, and I also believe Talisker, last time I had it, I think I found some peat in it as well, so you're gonna have smoke coming from two of the different distilleries that they use in this blend. And then the other two, I believe they use a Highland and a Speyside for the other two. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I believe the other two are a Highland and a Speyside. So it's going to give you the fruity and floral notes that you can get in there. Without further ado, guys, let's dive into the palate here and see what we find. That's very nice on the nose. It has an orange and apple and just very citrusy, sugary kind of blast on the nose initially. Definitely getting some barrel notes in there. I almost want to say bourbon. It almost feels like they aged this in bourbon barrels. Sherry barrels as well. I feel like I'm getting some dried fruit in there. It seems like a sherry barrel finish almost. A little bit of a creme brulee, like dough and vanilla, creamy kind of linger as well. Fresh cut grass, so it's got floral, it's got fruity, it's got spice, it's got a little bit of nut as well. I'm getting something, I can't quite tell what kind of nut I'm getting in here, but it's got a very nutty scent on the nose here. I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the palate here, guys. Honestly, I can't wait. That's a good whiskey. Wow. The creme brulee that I mentioned earlier on the nose, for me, it's very apparent on the palate as well. You get quite a bit of a creamy vanilla, like dough finish to it, almost like a shortbread cookie, and it's got intense smoke. The initial blast, for me, started with a fruit, like dried apple, dried pear. It gave that initial blast, led into some smokiness, and then kind of lingered off with a spicy and nutty finish on the palate. So that's one reason that I love this whiskey, is that it's so complex, but so easy to pick out everything that you can find in it. Realistically, a lot of these blended, if you don't have the word malt in there and you just have a regular blended scotch, it's a lot harder to pick specific things out when you're dealing with a regular blended scotch, because you have different grains. It's hard to pick things out when you have different grains. I mean, each grain is going to give you a distinctive flavor, right? And at the end of the day, there's a lot of other different factors that play into each flavor, like the region that they're born in, the barrels that are used to age in, were they peated, were they malted, were they unmalted. There's a million factors that are going to play into the way the whiskey tastes. So in my opinion, I feel like when it comes to the grain being used, the grain should be very limited, because there's already so much going into the blend itself, which is why you find cheap blended scotch, is because it's almost impossible to actually balance that. When you actually know the science behind making whiskey and how you get each flavor, it's an actual chemical reaction that gives you certain flavors. Like when you notice a honey flavor, it's a chemical reaction inside the barrel that is giving you that flavor. It literally is a man-made honey flavor that tastes exactly like honey. And it's hard to do stuff like that in a blended scotch. nevertheless, I'm getting off topic, so let's go back into the nose and see what else I can uncover here. See, that time it was different. It started out with a fruit blast, and now it was a floral blast. This is why I love this whiskey. Every time you dive into it, it's a completely different scotch. That creme brulee, though, is always there for me on the nose. Definitely always there. Ooh. That was a damn fine whiskey. Honestly, I cannot say truthfully that there's a better scotch than this, that there's a better whiskey than this. In my opinion, this is one of the finest whiskeys on the market today that at least I've tried. I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and say this is better than a 40-year-old Ardbeg or something, you know, I'm not going to do that. However, what I am going to do is say, out of all of the whiskeys that I've tried, this for me is probably going to be the one that I buy over and over and over again. And the reason for that is it's a fun whiskey. There's a lot of cool factors to having this. One, when you're a whiskey enthusiast and your main focus is the taste inside the bottle, this is a damn fine whiskey for that. Because I have a table full of different regions of Scotland. I have bourbon, I have rye, I have Irish, I have Japanese. The reason I have all of these is so depending on my mood, I can have different flavors and different notes depending on where I'm at. This bottle right here is that entire table put into one little bottle. And I mean that in a great way and not a terrible way. In a blended scotch, that's a terrible way because it's true. A blended scotch would be the equivalent of if I went over there and threw everything in a bottle. This, however, you can pick out each distinctive flavor. This is a great whiskey to have somebody taste, you know. I wouldn't necessarily say if somebody's a brand new drinker to whiskey, don't give them Johnnie Walker Green Label. They might get turned off from it because there is a heavy peat presence and it might scare them away from Johnnie Walker altogether. It might scare them away from blended scotch. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest giving this to somebody as their first whiskey that they've ever had. However, if they've had a couple and they want to just take a little bit of a step up, get something different, I do highly suggest this because this is a great whiskey to lead them in the right path. You give them this and then you ask them what flavors do you pick out of there, what flavors do you like, what flavors do you dislike, and then you can kind of learn from that and guide them in which kind of scotch they should get afterwards. So if they like the smokiness, you'll obviously lead them towards the Islay region. If they like the floral fruitiness, maybe lead them towards the Highland and Speyside region. So this is a good whiskey for that. You can give this to somebody, say what flavors do you like, and then give suggestions based on that. But with that being said, guys, I don't think there's really anything more I can say about this. I clearly highly recommend this whiskey. It's absolutely amazing. You know, the history behind it's really cool. The fact that they have the distilleries on the bottle is really cool. The bottle itself actually kind of reminds me of a Macallan bottle, so it's also got a very high-end bottle feel. It's one of the only Johnnie Walkers with a cork as the lid instead of a screw-on. I'm a suited whiskey snob, so the cork matters, guys. But yeah, highly recommend it. This is a complex whiskey that you can pick out every flavor. At least pick it up. It's $70, at least here in Alberta. It's a $70 whiskey. Pick it up. It's going to be worth it. Even if you don't like it, it's a great bottle to have on your shelf. So other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed my whiskey review. If you did, please hit the thumbs up down below. If you have anything you want me to do a whiskey review in the future, please throw it in the comments. Anything else like that, throw it in the comments there. Other than that, guys, Salancha, have a great night, and I will see you for my next whiskey review.